Hello and welcome. My name is Emma Brain from Gulf News in the UAE. On September the 15th, the Abraham Accord was signed between the UAE and Israel in Washington, normalizing ties between the two nations and ushering in a new era of cooperation. The treaty is expected to bring business and trade opportunities in a variety of sectors, including tourism. Air travel between the nations has already begun, with Fly Dubai and Israel operating commercial flights and setting the ground for more people-to-people contact. With me now to discuss the opportunities and potential for tourism in the new environment, I'd like to welcome the Israeli Minister of Tourism, Orit Farkash-Hacohen. Minister, hello and welcome.
Hello, it is great being here.
Fantastic. Now, first off, now that the UAE and Israel have allowed free movement of people between the two nations, what are your expectations for the tourism sector? And have you set any target for tourist arrivals from the UAE?
First and foremost, I think that what tourism is about connecting between cultures and connections between people. And while governments sign treaties or agreements, it is the people who make the true peace. So in that sense, the tourism is the main key, in my view, for a full normalization between these two cultures of the Emirates and the Israelites. And our targets, we're aiming towards 100,000 tourists per year, and we're working towards that goal. It is a little bit problematic at the moment due to the COVID-19 limitations, but hopefully this is our goal, and we are working towards that.
Lovely. And the UAE is home to 200 nationalities. What are the Israeli attractions that you think would appeal most to UAE citizens and residents?
I think what is great about Israel, that it can be considered a home away from home. You can spend 3 days in Israel, but you can also stay 3 weeks. It has modern cities like Tel Aviv, which is known, as much as Berlin, but you can have ancient history like nowhere else that is sacred for the 3 religions. If we're talking about Jerusalem, we have snow-capped mountain of the Hermon, and we have the beautiful Negev desert. And of course, we have sacred places for Islam, like Abu Nebi Musa, the Dome of Rock, Misgad al-Aqsa, and so much more. It is also a place for family and for business. And in that sense, we are preparing for all options. We are, refurnishing, or we are improving the tourism ministry site in the language of Arabic. We have published a document saying what to do, what not to do when we're meeting people from the Emirates regarding cultural differences. We are really thinking of how to improve the infrastructure of the tourism in Israel in order for us to be competitive and welcoming once the sky open. And of course that, we signed an MOU with the Emirates, and we're also working on the aircraft transportation lines to create all kind of commercial collaboration so that there will be an added value for both countries in the sense of tourism, marketing, mutual packages, go to Dubai and Tel Aviv, go to Abu Dhabi and Jerusalem. And we have a lot of expectations, and I hope that, this will become a reality.
Exciting times ahead, that's for sure. Can you tell us a little bit about the steps Israel has taken to ensure the safety of tourists amid the current pandemic?
The COVID-19 is a challenge all over the world, as you know, and it is an international, unprecedented challenge. And like in the rest of the world, the tourism sector was infected, I would say, heavily, or among the heavily damaged economic sectors. What we did in Israel is quite interesting. We just initiated 2 weeks ago a pilot called Green Tourism Islands. We took the two most heavily dependent on tourism areas in Israel. One is in the city of Eilat, which is in the south of the country, bordering with Aqaba and Jordan with a beautiful Red Sea. And the other one is the Dead Sea area, full of history and hotels. And we basically declared them as green tourism islands with people that can come on only by presenting a negative COVID-19, examination. They could go inside, they can enjoy tourism and a little bit of fresh air. And we are monitoring this. We open the hotels there, we open the stores there, and we are monitoring this. I was just informed today that the ambassador of Austria is about to tour these tourism islands in order to learn from what we decided to experience here in Israel, in order to see whether they can open their ski resorts in Austria under the same model. So we're happy with that model. It is up to now working, and this is what we have done. The rural tourism is still under operation with limitation of working without, big dining rooms or without swimming pools, so that we will be more intimate in the sense of being more safe with regards to COVID-19. But like the rest of the world, we are waiting for the vaccine to be operative so we can start living and going back to a routine and opening up the full abilities of tourism that Israel has to offer.
It's unfortunately, the tourism industry is one that's been hit the hardest during the COVID-19 pandemic. And I love this, the green sector approach. And I'm sure many other countries around the world will look to adopt this as well and look to see how you do it. What do you think draws Israeli tourists here to the UAE? And where do you see more business collaboration happening between the two nations?
I think that there is an amazing potential, commercial-wise or business-wise. I come from the infrastructure world. I used to be an energy regulator. And, we signed an MOU, the two governments to governments, with a very wide scope of areas. From what I read and know, the Emirates is a country that has done an amazing developments for its country and economy, and is trying to develop areas that are not only heavily dependent on oil. And in that sense, Israel is a haven for investment in a startup. We are a startup nation. We have lots of startups, second only to the Silicon Valley, I would say, in cyber, in technology, in innovation, also in energy, in innovative technologies with regards to solar energies. If we're talking about other infrastructure initiatives that Israel has done and has developed through the years, as we are here also in a desert-like climate, not very rich with water resorts, desalination technologies or tenders, agriculture developments. I think that in one way we have similar challenges, and on the other way we have other stronger areas, and it can be a complementary, collaboration of knowledge and investment. And I already know that the Emirates Wealth Fund is very interested in many investments in the state of Israel. And in that sense, maybe we can learn from the Emirates, because we have not yet established our wealth fund, although Israel is now, operating 3 gas reservoirs offshore of off the shore of the Mediterranean.
Certainly the UAE is, the infrastructure here has grown, and the UAE and Dubai in particular is testament to incredible growth over the last few decades, that is for sure. So these are challenging times for travel and tour operators, as well as the hospitality industry across the world. How is Israel helping its tourism industry to get back on track?
So like I said before, we opened the rural tourism. We are now under operation with the pilot of the green tourism islands that gives the breath to over 40% of the domestic tourism industry in Israel. I've also created a dialogue with the ministers that are responsible for tourism in the Emirates. The minister, His Excellency El Falassi, another minister, El Mari, and El Nayan. And we discussed about, once the skies open and even before that, of bringing together the people from both sides of the sectors to sit together and to create opportunities and collaborations. We have done that already with the Minister of Tourism and Economic of Bahrain, Mr. El Zayani. We have created a 3-day workshop with people from both sides of the industry, the representative of the aircraft company, of the flight companies, of the tourism organizations, of the hotels organization, and so on and so on. And I'm sure we will have a lot of potential. We have prepared already brochures for Israelis who are going to the Emirates or other countries to understand that they are coming to a new culture, to behave nicely. Israelis are known to be very blunt and very, and very loud sometimes, but we are great people. So just to let them know, to know that it's a different culture, and also on our part to get prepared for the halal, maybe food limitations. We're starting, getting our tour guides are getting, prepared to know what will be of interest to the Emirate tourists and to other countries that come from that same culture. And it's a challenge. We are working in Israel also to improve the infrastructure of all the hotels and the country itself. I have passed over a cabinet resolution saying that the tourism industry must go through a long-term development program. That will not be happening overnight, but it is a good start to think long-term. And I want to also close in what I started. People are the true connection between countries and nations. And, the politicians can sign treaties, but people are the one who will make it happen. And I hope that tourism will assist in that.
Mm-hmm. And so obviously there are some challenges that need to be overcome at this point, but we look forward to seeing how it takes off and increases in the future. And just finally, I wanted to ask you, how do you think free movement of people between the UAE and Israel is going to encourage more international tourism to the region?
I think this will depend on the, on the spread and the network that every new airline will bring to Israel, both from the Emirates and from Bahrain. The Minister of Tourism of Bahrain, for example, elaborated on the location of these airlines, that they bring, a new sets of population from Asia and so on, that might do a stop or a connection flight when they use connection flights, and when they do a stop in their flight in Israel, in Tel Aviv, or in Jerusalem, or somewhere else. So that can bring, a new set of tourists to Israel. And of course, we have the challenge of the COVID-19 to bring back people from Europe, from North America, from South America, and so on. I think that once the skies open, after, with God's help, we will get over the COVID-19 crisis. I think there will be a great deal of competition between countries on tourists that on one hand will be very keen on going and traveling, but will also have a lot of competition between different countries. And I hope that the collaboration and the combination between the Emirates and Israel can market something that is more than 1+1 to tourists from all over the world, because the combination of seeing that country and Israel with a different characteristic of those two countries can create a whole new experience of tourism. And I hope that we will see it in the number of tourists coming to both countries.
I hope so too, and I think we can all look forward to traveling again in the not too distant future. So thank you so much, the Israeli Minister of Tourism, Orit Farkash-Hacohen. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.